The Super Bowl 58 player props and MVP picks edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's US-based and available in 40 states. Head to cut.com, that's KUTT.com, and use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. And we're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. And don't forget to enter the SGPN Super Bowl 58 props contest. Pick 58 Super Bowl props for a chance to win $1,000. Enter today for free at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/SB58 or in the SGPN app. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Wednesday, February the 7th, ever so closer to the Super Bowl kicking off on Sunday, early evening, usually, I guess we can say it. And here to get into our player props for the big game, we'll also throw out our touchdown scores, our MVP picks, and then Chris and I will give our official predictions for the big game and who we think will be hoisting the Lombardi Trophy come Sunday night to wrap up the 2023 NFL season. But joining me as usual here to help me break everything down for this big game, you guys know him as a voice, of course, on the NBA Propcast as well. One of the hardest working men in this sports gambling space is my main man, ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great. What's going on with you, man? Hoping everything is well with you and all our listeners. Excited, man. Like you said, every sleep is one sleep away. One less sleep away. From Big Sunday, man. So I know for people who didn't or maybe missed the pod, we talked about game props already. So definitely check that episode out. But excited. This is the good stuff right here. This is the meat and the potatoes kind of. Talking about who's going to win the game and which player we think are going to either perform really well or, not perform really well. So excited to jump into it and, dive into these looks,
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned there, Chris, we did the game props yesterday. Had some, fun ones in there as well. Chris had some fun ones in there as well. And then we, threw out game props as well. I think that are definitely going to be profitable in this game here on Sunday between the Chiefs and the 49ers for the Super Bowl. But I mean, like you mentioned, Chris, this is going to be the cream of the crop, the bread and butter for us. That's been all season long, the player props for the big game here. So a lot for us to get to here, Chris. So let's just dive right into it, man. Let's get into our player props. We'll throw about anywhere from 3 to 5. We'll talk about our honorable mentions that we usually do. And then we'll just kind of go from there. So, Chris, lead us off, man. Player prop number 1 for Super Bowl 58, man. What do you got?
Let's do it. We are going with the guy himself, the legend, the early legend. I think we can already say he's a legend. We're looking at Patrick Mahomes. We'll start with the quarterback position and going right for his pass attempts. We know San Francisco's defense is pretty immaculate on that side of the ball with being able to slow down their opponent's rushes. But so I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes. Passing attempts number is 36.5, minus 110. Shop around, not laying too much big here, but like I said, San Francisco, they force teams to pass the ball at the highest rate in the league, 36.5 times per game, which is what this number is, because they limit the rush so well. We know this. We've talked about this throughout the Propcast. Top 5 in rushing yards allowed this season, only giving up 97 per game, and we talked about this in the game props that we talked about. But we do expect these defenses to play well, and I think that's going to force Mahomes into passing the ball. But guess what? He doesn't care. He doesn't care about being forced into passing the ball, Kansas City passes the ball at 7 highest frequency in the league, over 60% of the time, nearly 37 attempts per game. So the numbers seem kind of spot on. Mahomes has covered the 37 pass attempts in 12 of the 19 games that he's played in so far this season. That's 63%. So if you're telling me, coming into the big game, I don't think he's going to be, gun shy at all in this spot, looking back at, just Super Bowl playoff history, 27 attempts in last year's Super Bowl against Philly. But he has gone over against Tampa Bay and against these same San Francisco 49ers with 49 and 42 in his career as well. So you got 2-1 there. Yeah, sign me up for Mahomes passing the thing, slinging it all around the field. The other thing I checked, just not based on these numbers, but I looked at time of possession, and it's about even. San Francisco can have long, methodical drives, but their offense is pretty big on making, big plays, right? Whether it's Brock Purdy throwing a deep pass to Brandon Ayuk or Christian McCaffrey breaking a long play. So I don't necessarily worry about Mahomes being limited, for Kansas City being limited from a time of possession perspective, because both of these teams typically possess the ball for about half of the game.
Yeah, I think for especially like this year, like for the Chiefs, we talked about in the game props that a lot of it has been due to their defense on why they're here. But obviously, when you have Mr. Superhuman, a legend, future first ballot Hall of Famer, no question about it, in Patrick Mahomes, it starts and stops with him, right? And I think that obviously the two rings that they have, one with Patrick Mahomes, it's been Patrick Mahomes has led the way. And I think especially in this game where I feel like Chris, and I know we'll talk about our official predictions, towards the end of in the episode here, but I don't think there's a lot of pressure on the Chiefs to go out and win this. I don't think a lot of people coming into this season in particular expected the Chiefs to get here because we thought there would be a fall off here, but Patrick Mahomes has done Patrick Mahomes things, and you can't bet against a guy that's in the conversation for the greatest of all time, right up there with Tom Brady, right? So you laid out a great handicap there, and I think that again for this Chiefs team, that if the San Francisco 49ers, and we've seen that they have struggled a little bit defensively in those two playoff games, that we could probably make the argument that they should have maybe even lost those two playoff games against the Packers and the Lions, because they were trailing that game, that to come from behind. But the 49ers, you can't do that against Patrick Mahomes because he will make you pay. And I think, again, for Patrick Mahomes, I think it's going to be on his shoulders for them to win this football game. And again, his greatest talent obviously is throwing the football here. So I think I definitely can get behind over on his pass attempts here as well, which leads me right to my first player prop, is also with Patrick Mahomes. I thought this number was a little conservative here, Chris. Mahomes rush attempts over 4.5. I'm all over this one as my first player prop here.
You're my notes, because I got that one too.
Yeah, I was a little confused on this number. So let's start with number one. Let's just say the Chiefs. Let's start with this. Let's say we think the Chiefs win this game and they're in victory formation. That's maybe another 1, 2, 3 attempts right there, because those kneel downs do count as attempts for quarterbacks. But let's look at the facts as well, right? So Patrick Mahomes in back-to-back games in the playoffs this year against the Buffalo Bills and against the Baltimore Ravens has 6 rush attempts each in those games. And again, some of those are also kneel downs. We go back to the Super Bowl last year, Chris, 6 attempts, 44 yards for Patrick Mahomes. The divisional game previous against the Buffalo Bills, again, 7 for 69. Go back to that Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 5 for 33, 5 attempts there. And the Super Bowl against this same team in 2020 against the San Francisco 49ers, 9 attempts for 29 yards in that game for Patrick Mahomes. So I do remember, I think it was that game against the Niners where I was on the over on his pass, for his rushing yards. And I think that was the game where he went back a little further where he needed to go, and the under for his rushing yards cash because of the way he kneeled the ball down at the end of that game. So I told myself I'm just going to go look at his rushing yards, rush attempts in this game. So at 4.5, I'm going to be all over that here for Patrick Mahomes. And again, Chris, 3 of the last 4 games for Patrick Mahomes, he has at least 6 rushing attempts for the Kansas City Chiefs. So my first player prop correlated here on Patrick Mahomes as well. Give me the rushing attempts over 4.5 here, Chris.
Yeah, I typically don't go double prop, for one player. But I mean, how could you not like this one, right? We know if the game comes down to it, and is the biggest game of, quote unquote, the next biggest game of his career. Granted, he's been in this situation before. I mean, we can't expect him to be conservative in this spot, and we know what Patrick Mahomes can do with his legs, right? He does. He slings the ball so well that he doesn't have to run, but he still has that Texas Tech. Patrick Mahomes, he's still a spring chicken. He's still a little wet behind the ears here. If this guy is not old at all, he can definitely. I definitely expect him to use his legs if he needs to. I thought the number was a tad bit conservative as well. 4.5, like you said, over in 6. Especially throughout the playoffs in general, and just the last few games. San Francisco likes to blitz a lot as well. They're gonna send pressure, try to make them, feel a little uncomfortable back there. And I think that's a part of the handicap as well, as him being able to get outside the pocket because maybe the pocket collapsed. And he's gonna use his feet to pick up first downs. He knows how to slide well, and it's no way I could not talk. I thought this one would be 5.5, and then I'd be a little more concerned, but 4.5, I was on it as with you. I'm on it with you as well.
Yeah, I love this one here for Patrick Mahomes here. All right, Chris, before we get over to our next player props here for Super Bowl 58, let me tell, everyone about DraftKings Sportsbook. Looking for a super offer for Super Bowl 58? DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. New customers can bet on the big game and turn $5 into $200 instantly in bonus bets. We just mentioned that we do like Patrick Mahomes over on his rush attempts. Right now, you can get down on that over on DraftKings at the over 4.5 at -130 for Patrick Mahomes. So definitely check it out over there on DraftKings Sportsbook. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code SGP. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 58 with code SGP. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. And we're also brought to you by Prize Picks. Look, Prize Picks is the most fun I've had all season long. I've won up to 25x my money this football season. And now with the basketball season here, and we're in the meat of it with college basketball and the NBA, you can also create those combo projections over on Prize Picks. You select just 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. With the basketball season here, like I mentioned, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a combo of 10.5 of 3-pointers made and receptions. Well, you can do that now over on Prize Picks. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community every single week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So, how do you take advantage of this? Well, just go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use promo code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com using promo code SGPN. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here, my man. So that was your second. You're also going with Patrick Mahomes on the over on his.
Yes. I'm with you on the over there as well. Player prop number 2 for me.
All right. So I'm going to go over to his counterpart, his best friend on the field. That's going to be Mr. Travis Kelce. This number was at 6.5 on his receptions. It has now moved to 7.5. I'm so comfortable with it at 7.5. But I did play this at 6.5. If you're able to find a 6.5, great. But if you want to pivot to his receiving yards in this game, I just think that this is going to be a spot where Travis Kelce shines. And especially when we talk about the biggest stage, the biggest moment. And we talked about this when we did the divisional round and the conference championship, that Mahomes is going to find his guy, Travis Kelce. And that's just what it is for me. So you take a look at what Travis Kelce has done in the playoffs, at least this season. All 3 games in the playoffs, he's had 70 or more receiving yards. He had 71 on 7 receptions against the Miami Dolphins, 5 receptions, 75 yards against the Buffalo Bills, and then 11 receptions on 11 targets, 116 yards for Travis Kelce against the Baltimore Ravens in the conference championship. And I know when we talk about the San Francisco 49ers defense that they've struggled a little bit throughout this postseason. Like I mentioned, you take a look at last game in the conference championship against the Detroit Lions. Sam Laporta in that game, 9 receptions and 97 receiving yards. In that game, they gave up a total of 7 receptions to the Green Bay Packers in the divisional round. To those tight ends, Luke Musgrave had 3 for 14. Tucker Kraft had 3 receptions. Ben Sims even got 1. So they're giving it up to the tight end position. So like I mentioned, when it matters the most, Travis Kelce will rise to the occasion here. Patrick Mahomes will find him. So if you want to play the over 70.5 receiving yards for Travis Kelce or his receptions, I'm comfortable with both. I'll give you guys both of those here. But if you had a gun to my head now at 7.5, I would then pivot to his receiving yards, 70.5 receiving yards for Travis Kelce here, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, if we love Patrick Mahomes as much as we do, Rob was on the pod with us today, he'd probably tell us that's enough talking about Kansas City. I mean, because we love we've only talked about the Chiefs so far, but I think if you love Mahomes, if you got to pair him with his counterpart, right? I mean, everyone thinks that Taylor Swift is his soulmate, but I mean, truly, we know that it's really Patrick Mahomes. I mean, these guys are inseparable, especially when they're on the field, right? So. I love Travis Kelce in this spot. I also feel like even though they've done this before, every championship feels like they almost got to reestablish themselves because there's so much hype and so much that goes into these players not being able to do it again, and Taylor Swift is a distraction, and we saw what he was able to come out and do in that last game. So I would only be looking towards Travis Kelce to have another huge day. And me and Rod talked about this on the episodes that you missed because I was on Travis Kelce. I've been riding Travis Kelce throughout the playoffs, but just talking about if me and it's happening, then of course the defensive coordinators know it's happening, but nobody can seem to stop it. So until it's done, I think you just keep betting on Travis Kelce. I know a lot of money. This is a super popular play, of course. A lot of money on his over, but I mean, how could I talk you up? This dude is the combination between the two. It's like Shaq and Kobe, man. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, Travis Kelce does a fantastic job of finding the holes in the defense, and he just kind of plants himself there. Mahomes finds him, and he also can, he's not the fastest guy on the field, but he gets those yards after the catch, right? And I think that really racks up for Travis Kelce here. So I'm expecting him to have another big game here for the Kansas City Chiefs. And kind of just also going back and looking at what he's done in the Super Bowl. Last year, he had 6 receptions, 81 yards against the Philadelphia Eagles, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 10 receptions on 15 targets, 133 yards in that game. And then against the San Francisco 49ers, he only had 6 receptions for 43 yards in that game. But again, I think this is, again, with this version of this team without Tyreek Hill and a legitimate, I think, another receiver where the Chiefs offense has to spread it around a little bit. Travis Kelce is reliable. He's like your number. He's your number one guy. Is Travis Kelce. So yeah, I definitely see him having another big game here for the Kansas City Chiefs. So all right, so that's 2 player props each here. Chris, let's get over to your third player prop, my man. What do you got?
I want to stay with the quarterback position. I just want to go over here to Brock Purdy. I feel like I got a pretty good read on these quarterbacks. So 3 props, three player props, all on quarterbacks. I do have a couple honorable mentions that I want to also mention, but looking at Brock Purdy, I see his passing yards all the way up to 246.5, and I think that number is a tad bit too low. I think this game is more of an under game because we talked about the defense being good, although these offenses have also been good. But I don't think Brock Purdy reaches 250 yards, and I'm comfortable taking him at under 246.5 here as well. If I look at him passing the ball, and he's gone over this number. He's actually 3 or 4 in his last 4 games he actually passed for 255 against Baltimore. Then the Commanders don't really count. He didn't have to play the whole game. And then of course he got there, against the Detroit defense and that Green Bay defense as well. But as you follow football, how well those defenses are, and those are not elite defenses. Green Bay had a weakness this season. It was their pass defense when it really came down to it. And the same thing with Detroit. We know Detroit was a top 5 defense to stop in the run. We made a lot of money taking opponent running backs unders, rushing yards under. But that wasn't it for them either. I look at Kansas City on the opposite side, though. This team has been elite defensively against the pass, pretty much for the whole season. And I think the narrative around, Kansas City and, Patrick Mahomes always going to get all the credit, but this defense has stepped up big time, road wins in Buffalo, going to Baltimore. It really was their defense. That's why Patrick Mahomes' passing yards didn't necessarily have to cash. So, dumbing it back down to Kansas City's defense, 181 and a half passing yards allowed per game. Nobody thinks about Kansas City defense as that, but that's actually the fourth fewest in the league, right? And we know on the opposite side, they're going to the 49ers are going to try to feed the ball to Christian McCaffrey. We see his numbers; they're inflated pretty much everywhere. 130, I think, yards is what he's combined for rushing plus receiving. So to me, this number is just a tad bit too high based on his recent performances. Going back through the playoffs, last week, 2 weeks ago, the Ravens did, Lamar Jackson did throw for 272, but it was primarily because Kansas City jumped out on them so early, and they were playing from behind. They didn't want to play that way. Against Josh Allen and the elite quarterback that he is, 186 yards at home, against the Dolphins and Tua, this offense was elite this year, 199 yards. So, and I could keep going on. They've held, opponents under this 250, 246 and a half in 6 of their last 8. It's very rare that teams are going to pass the ball this much. And I think we see much more, maybe they try to control the ball a little bit more, keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. Not sure if that's going to happen, but for all of those reasons, I am comfortable taking Brock Purdy to go under. And the lights could be a little too bright for him. Patrick Mahomes has been here, but Purdy has not. So under his passing yards in 5 straight games, after going over in 9 of his first 13, we've seen, the ball really be handed to and put into the hands of, CMC. So give me Brock Purdy in this spot also, another quarterback prop to go under his 246 and a half passing yards. Got that number on Caesars.
I'd be curious to see if there is props out there that go by quarter, like first quarter passing yards, receiving yards, because I feel like Kyle Shanahan is really going to ease Brock Purdy into this game, right? So we may see Christian McCaffrey getting the handoffs, within those first couple of drives, and Brock Purdy maybe having some short passes on some, maybe a slant route or a hook route or a screen pass, just to kind of get him, into the flow of the game, and maybe have him take a hit and be like, all right, kind of get those jitters out, because again, you mentioned, right, Patrick Mahomes' this Chiefs team has been here numerous times. They've won 2 titles, so they know the routine of what transpires for the Super Bowl. Yes, I know the San Francisco 49ers have been there as well, but this was 4 years ago against the same team, and I know a lot of the players that were on that team are still here, but this is a completely different quarterback. I mean, we talked about it yesterday on the games props that Brock Purdy was the last pick of the draft, a couple seasons ago. So I think for Brock Purdy, I think that it will take a little bit for him to kind of get the jitters out and for that offense to start flowing a little bit. So I'm with you here on the under 236. Also, I think that you mentioned it. I think that we'll see a little bit of more Christian McCaffrey in this game, because you traded for him, and this is the reason why you're here in the Super Bowl. Let's get the ball to our best offensive player in Christian McCaffrey. So I think that's a little bit of correlation, that if you don't like Purdy in this game, you probably want to pivot and look at a Christian McCaffrey in this game. So yeah, I do like this call here for Brock Purdy. All right, Chris, before we continue on our player props here for Super Bowl 58, let me tell everyone where we're giving out some winners here and where you can take advantage of it. And that's going to be over on the Super Bowl 58 props contest happening at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's $1,000 winner takes all. It's free to enter. You pick 58 props for Super Bowl 58. You enter today, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/SB58, or you can get the link in the SGPN app. And we're also brought to you by Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer betting social platform that's US-based and available in 40 states. Peer-to-peer social betting is a new and better way to bet. Bet directly against your friends or other users on sports, politics, pop culture, and other events with verifiable outcomes, and it's tons of fun social features that gives it a feel of a betting social network. Cut offers lower vig and fully customizable odds to create your own bets. Cut even handles the payment side of things, so you never have to chase anyone down for money. Social features include group chats, betting leaderboards, head-to-head history, user profiles, fan groups, and much more. I also have a rewards program that you can get cash back for every single time you bet against your friends or other users. Cut also allows you to list almost any kind of bet, perfect for getting action on those fun Super Bowl prop bets. Cut is the peer-to-peer social betting platform that's US based and available in 40 states. Head to cut.com. That's KUTT.com. Use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. And we're also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time gives you the opportunity to take that stress away from that ticket buying experience, because we know sometimes looking for tickets to your favorite events, whether it's sports, comedy show, theater, it can get stressful. Game Time takes away that stress, and they make it super easy. Their app is so easy to use. I've used it plenty of times. They have great flash deals. They have last-minute tickets available, and it's easy to find tickets for every type of event in your area, like I mentioned. They also have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection as well. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section in a row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's how confident they are in their price. So all you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code CFBX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here, my man. Let me get over to my third player prop for the big game here. And I am going to go over to finally, let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers side of things here. I know you mentioned the Brock Purdy under, but obviously I do think that he's going to have to throw the football in this game. And I'm looking at George Kittle in this game. His number is sitting at 47.5. I think this is going to be a big George Kittle game. I'm not sure if you saw the clip that was kind of circulating when the Niners made the Super Bowl, that when they were in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs the previous year, back at Super Bowl 54, the Chiefs had ended up winning the game. You saw George Kittle on the sideline kind of talking to himself and saying, hey, I'm going to be back with a vengeance. This is not the best that you've gotten out of me. No, sir. In so many words, that's what he's saying. So I think that George Kittle will go out there and really, take on this opportunity for them to win a Super Bowl for the 49ers organization. And again, when you take a look at going back to last season, even when Brock Purdy took over as the quarterback for this Niners team, George Kittle was his reliable guy. And I know he hasn't gone over this number in the playoffs against the Lions. At least he did have 81 yards against the Green Bay Packers. And if you go back to the regular season, he had 126 against the Baltimore Ravens. Against the Cardinals, he had 54. But I think in this game, where if we're talking about Brock Purdy, he's going to have to settle into this game, it's going to have to be short, quick passes. And I think that's where George Kittle should be the beneficiary of getting those receiving yards. We go back to that Bills game against the Chiefs in the divisional round. Dalton Kincaid in that game, 5 receptions in that game, did have 45 receiving yards. I know it's not over this number, but I think this is an opportunity for George Kittle to have a big game here for the San Francisco 49ers offense. And if they do want to win this game, I think George Kittle is going to have to be pivotal for this offense of the San Francisco 49ers. So I expect George Kittle to get a lot of targets in this game as well. So I expect him to get at least 50 to 60 receiving yards in this game here. So give me George Kittle over 47.5 is the updated number right now, Chris.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. Somebody's gonna have to step up. We always talk about when we're handicapping, whether it's whether we're on the NBA podcast, or we're doing it here. But let's talk about motivation, right? And I think you started this handicap off with something that is that you can take is almost like his goal, right? He won't want to squander this opportunity of being able to make it back. And I think you got to trust in his words and believe that. And I definitely would. I also just I don't really like the matchups for the wide receivers as much. Brandon Ayuk has been hit or miss. Deebo Samuel, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be trying to get him the ball because he is a dynamic playmaker, whether it's taking a swing pass out the backfield or reverse, or trying to get him the ball down the field and just put the ball in his hands so he can make plays. But the one thing about Kansas City if they do a really good job of tackling, and they don't give up a lot of big plays, which is why you see, one of the things that makes me, pretty happy about taking, Brock Purdy to go under his passing yards. But if somebody is going to have a big day, I do think it's going to be in the middle of the field. Somebody like Kittle, who can is a big body, so he's big frame that Purdy will be able to find him. And this one just makes a lot of sense to me. I hadn't really thought about that, but I'll tell you where I was going. I was actually going Deebo Samuel under, so it does kind of correlate, right? Yeah. Rushing and receiving yards. I haven't placed this one yet, but it's definitely my first honorable mention I wanted to mention. I kind of talked about it. The Chiefs do a really good job of tackling the ball and finding, where when guys catch the ball, they don't give up a lot of yak, right? Yards after the carry. They limit teams to that, and they do a really good job of game tackling. And I do expect this defense to travel. It's been traveling throughout the playoffs. It's overlooked. And I don't think that they care. I think they just want to show up and win the game. So, looking back 2 weeks ago, outside of who, none of these wide receivers for the Ravens did much at all. Zay Flowers, I guess, had 5 for 115, but a big, there was also a big chunk play in there. And then I was also looking at the week before when when they were playing against the dynamic Chiefs defense. Bills defense. And Stephon Diggs had 3 catches on 8 targets for 21 yards. That is telling, right? Biggest game of the season, probably biggest game of your career. Trying to get to the Super Bowl for the first time, absolutely not. You go back even a week before, first round, Tyreek Hill, Cheetah, 5 receptions on 8 targets for 62 yards. They do a really good job of taking away. Spagnuolo on that defense does a really good job of taking away your number one option. So, rushing and receiving, I think, granted, he can have a big play, but I don't think so. I like Deebo to stay under here, 80.5. He's gone under this number in 5 of his last 6 games. Only 1 game he's actually gone over, and they haven't been using him as much. If you just look at his usage over the last few games since the playoffs have started, it's been a lot more CMC getting the ball. Targets are up, rush attempts are up, than Deebo getting the ball, specifically at the backfield. So when you combine these, then you need Deebo to do both, and I just don't think he's going to be as effective in this game. So under 80.5 rushing plus receiving for Deebo is something that I'm also considering. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but this one's in the best list.
I think the only over I would play for Deebo is probably his rushing yards, because I think that we kind of go back to talking about Brock Purdy, right, and trying to get him settled into this game. I think that there may be an opportunity for Deebo Samuel to rush the football here. But you nailed the handicap, right? When you talked about some of the number 1 wide receivers that the Chiefs have faced, they've really limited them. And I know Zay Flowers, I think, had 1 big catch. I think it was for that touchdown that really got his yardage up there. But other than that, like you mentioned, they've been able to shut these number 1 wide receiver options down, which I think, again, like I mentioned, kind of goes over to my George Kittle over, and maybe even if it's a Brandon Ayuk game as well. So again, Deebo Samuel, I do expect him to be involved in some capacity, or obviously involved in the passing game. But I think more so for his rushing there. But I think at 80.5, especially in a game where I believe it may be a little more of a defensive game here, I think this number may be a little bit too high for Deebo Samuel. So I'm with you on that here as well. Do you have any more player props? You want to get into some honorable mentions? I know you just mentioned that as an honorable mention.
Yeah, so that was an honorable mention. I'll kick it to you. I think it was one more. Let me say my notes real quick. I think it was one more. I was like,
okay, so I'll go about another player prop here. So we talked about Christian McCaffrey in this game, and I think that we talked about how great the the pass defense has been for this Kansas City Chiefs team. Where I think now that Christian McCaffrey will have to run the football here for the San Francisco 49ers. And you take a look at what he's been able to do, all throughout the regular season, but also in the playoffs. He had 20 rush attempts against the Detroit Lions, 20 for 90 yards. So I think they're going to feed him the ball here. The number's 18.5 in this game. I would not be surprised if he does have 20 rush attempts in this game. But also, you take a look at what the running backs have done against the Chiefs in the last couple games. So against the Ravens, I have no idea why they decided not to run the football in that game. against the Chiefs, but they only had 6 rush attempts in that game between their running backs, 3 for Gus Edwards and 3 for Justice Hill. Let's go back to the Buffalo Bills, where Buffalo Bills were smart enough to run the football. They just had too many mistakes in that game. James Cook in that game, 18 attempts for 61 rushing yards. So I think that, again, we talk about the Brock Purdy perspective, that if Kyle Shanahan and their offensive game plan is going to be to, I don't want to say protect Brock Purdy, but prevent him from making mistakes, I think you have to rely on Christian McCaffrey. So I think that 18.5 rush attempts for McCaffrey, I do like the over on that. This one does come in as a little bit juiced at minus 118, minus 140 in this game here, Chris.
Yeah, first I tell people if they, were interested, and I'm interested in this one here, Munaf, as well. It's a lot of different angles, and I think you did a perfect job of nailing the handicap. You also just want to limit, right? You want Purdy to manage the game. You want McCaffrey to be a superstar, get him the ball. He's a dynamic playmaker, of course. And you also, the other part of that, you want Patrick Mahomes sitting on the sideline. You want him to be cold. Yep. You want the defense to stay on the field. All of those different things. But I'll say this: you said minus 140. I do see some minus 120s out, minus 124s out there. Right. Minus 124, minus 128, minus 125. So definitely shop around, find the best number. But the only way I would play McCaffrey is over in this game. I think he's too, can you imagine the press that the San Francisco 49er team would get if he didn't touch the ball enough, And we'll know what enough is as the game goes on, right? But if he didn't touch the ball enough, and they have an excellent play caller over there. So, that whole, that offense is dynamic within itself. So, Kansas City defense will be put to the test, but I do think Christian McCaffrey, as long as they don't get down by too much early, and I don't think Kansas City jumps out to too big of a lead, even if they do go up early. As long as that doesn't happen, I would only be able to play CMC to go over, like you said, potentially 20 in this spot, Real quick, I got a question for you. What about Pacheco?
Yeah,
how do you feel about Pacheco in this one? I see his rush attempts, and that was something that I was looking at as well. 15.5, juice minus 130-ish, 16.5 on some books. Kansas City's been, relying upon the run as well. I know San Francisco's rush defense is good. What are your thoughts on Pacheco?
So the Niners have been a little bit vulnerable, especially over the 2 playoff games, to the running back position, where they were absolutely stellar all season long. So against the Packers, Aaron Jones had a field day, 18 for 108. Last week, David Montgomery, 15 for 93. Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 for 45. So I think there's I would look at his rushing yards in this game here as well. Because we know there's just like one type of way that Isaiah Pacheco runs the football, and it's violently. And it's really hard to bring a player like him down. It's at 66.5 for his rushing yards. I think that number is pretty much spot on. I feel like that 16.5 may be a little bit too much for Isaiah Pacheco, because if we do like Patrick Mahomes in this game, to have a lot of success throwing the football, then I think that Pacheco may have to take a back seat, and they may not run the ball as often. But there's always that opportunity where it may just take 2 or 3 big runs for him to get over his projection on his rushing yards. And let's just say it comes down to that fourth quarter, the Chiefs may have the lead and they're trying to kill the clock. Then they got handed off to Isaiah Pacheco and rack up those yards as well. So, take a look, Chris, over the last 4 games, he's gone over this projection rather easily. 130 against the Bengals, 89 in the playoff game against the Dolphins, 97 against the Buffalo Bills, 68 last week against the Baltimore Ravens. So I think the opportunities are going to be there for Pacheco in this game. So I would look at his rushing yards to go over in this game. I'm not comfortable with that 16.5 rush attempts number for him.
Yards over attempts, I can see that. Like you said, violent runner. Even though San Francisco does a really good job of stopping the run for the season, like you said, they have been a little vulnerable. And we could argue this would be the best running back that they face in the playoffs as well. If I know, like you said, Aaron Jones had a really good game, and Jahmyr Gibbs and that running back crew as well. But this dude is top level right now, and really getting a chance to kind of showcase his talent. So I could get behind that as well. Staying off the rush attempts and just playing the yards here.
All right, Chris, any more props or honorable mentions we want to throw out? No,
I think that's it. I'll stop there. But okay. I will say maybe it's I haven't really completely finished the handicap, but I like Purdy to throw up interception, and it's not juiced.
Okay. Yeah.
It's minus 120. I want to say Purdy's throwing an interception in a couple of these big games. I know he didn't throw one he did throw one. He threw one against Detroit in the NFC Championship game. The week before he didn't throw one, but the week before that he did throw one. So he threw 4. So yeah, he's been I don't know, man. I think like I said, I got to look a little more into it. But I think if I'm looking at an interception prop, potentially being rattled. We talked about Kansas City defense being really spot on. And if Kansas City is playing from in front and they're not able to use him as a game manager, if he's forced into throwing the ball a little bit more, it takes us a tip pass. Kansas City got a pretty good pass rush as well. Chris Jones on the defensive line and those other guys out there making plays. So Kansas City defense, I think they can get an interception in this game. Haven't looked, like I said, got to dive a little bit more into it, but it's on my short list as well.
The Chiefs did pick off Tua. They did pick off Lamar last week as well. So they picked off 2 of the 3 quarterbacks that they have faced. Chris, I'm going to pose this question to you as well. I think this has been one of the popular plays that's kind of been going around. And the stats are backing it up. But what do you think about Brock Purdy on his rushing yards to go over? I think that number was at 12.5. I think it may have gone up to 13.5 here. Let me see if I can find the number for it exactly. So it's still at 12.5 right now. And you take a look over the past, this even goes back to the regular season for the Chiefs and quarterbacks against the Chiefs and their rushing yards. So Jake Browning, 7 for 32. Easton Stick, 13 for 77. Tua even had 3 attempts for 25 rushing yards. Josh Allen, 12 for 72 in the last week. Lamar, 8 for 54. So I know Brock Purdy is maybe not be the most mobile guy out there, but it seems like these quarterbacks that they have faced, even dating back to the regular season there, Chris, that they are getting over this projection right now, at least of what Brock Purdy has of 12.5 in this game. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it will be over. It'll be over. And then I just kind of feel like, the longer the season goes, the bigger the game gets, the brighter the lights get, the more you have to do whatever it is that you have to do in order to, move the chains, right? So, where he may not feel comfortable, in the regular season game, running the ball, if the opportunity presents itself, I do expect him to tuck the ball, make the smart play, maybe pick up, 5 yards here, 4 yards here. It doesn't have to be, necessarily big runs, but I do think that he'll utilize his legs in this game. And like you said, the numbers kind of back it as well, coming off a game where he ran 5 times for 48 yards. So yeah, I could see this one happening as well. You mentioned, Kansas City, defensively, not a lot of holes, but they have been, like you said, conceding this number pretty frequently as of late.
Yeah, I want to throw that one out there as well because I see the stats are obviously backing it up as when I should mention the 2 playoff games in the playoffs this year against the Packers, 6 attempts for 14 yards, and then against the Detroit Lions last week, 5 attempts for 48 yards in that game. So yeah, that might be another one that I will be adding to the card here. All right, Chris, before we get over to our touchdown scores in this game, let me tell everyone about Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, a sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets Revolutionary Parlay Optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort our players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first one today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, Chris, let's get into our touchdown scores for this game. Who are you expecting to find the end zone here in Super Bowl 58?
I mean, the obvious one, super obvious is, a guy, Travis Kelce.
Yep.
I do think that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. And it's crazy to think that, for me anyway, looking at Christian McCaffrey, minus 215, I know it's they both skill positions and Chris McCaffrey he's a little bit more involvement, we'll say, just because he can rush the ball as well. But Travis Kelce being plus money, not on a lot of books, but I do see a FanDuel that's still, plus 100 where, other books are moving it. I see it all the way down to minus 125. So that's why we always talk about, shopping around. But in the magnitude of a game like this, if you already talked about how many, him going over his reception prop and, potentially liking it, even though the number has increased now. You just have to believe that if they get close to the end zone, outside of him being able to, break away one, if they get close to the end zone, I mean, it'll be a jump ball to Kelce. It'll be a fade to Kelce. It'll be one of those little pitches that we talked about in, yesterday's show. So, I mean, inevitably have to be Travis Kelce in this spot. I also think Patrick Mahomes, he's not somebody that's often talked about, rushing the ball and getting in the end zone. You can actually get Patrick Mahomes all the way up to plus 400 right now. Yep. But if they get into the, if they get down and, he breaks away one, we've seen him score a couple times this season, rushing the ball, utilizing his legs. So yeah, I like those two guys on that side of the ball. Like you said, no value at all with Christian McCaffrey being minus 215. You literally got to take him to score twice. And shout out to Rod, because I think Rod did give out Christian McCaffrey to score twice, and of course he did in that last game. So I know Rod cashed on that one. Now that I'm just thinking about it, but on the opposite side of the ball, I think your guy George Kittle plus 185. Yeah. Like you said, I think his usage is going to be there as well. It kind of makes sense that both tight ends kind of use their safety blankets in this spot and turn to those guys. So I think those would be my top three. I look for Kittle to have a big game. Kind of like just kind of echoing everything that you said. And if they do get down into that red zone, I do think that this Chiefs defense is going to be able to slow their run down. And while they do well against the pass, they can be susceptible to the tight end. So give me your guy George Kittle. Give me definitely give me Travis Kelce. I'm not like venturing out and trying to catch these plus 1700s on this. I'm picking guys I really think will get into the end zone. And give me I will, like I said, plus 400 though. Give me a little sprinkle on Mahomes to be able to find Peter in this spot as well.
Yeah, I think the guys that you mentioned right there, Travis Kelce, obviously, I think the obvious one is at the top of the list. We get down to that red zone. Mahomes is looking for his guy. So, again, Travis Kelce at minus 110, currently on DraftKings. George Kittle, you mentioned it as well. I was going to name him as well, plus 165. I do like the Mahomes angle that you mentioned there, right? He did score a rushing touchdown against his San Francisco 49ers team in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. So, maybe history repeats itself here for Patrick Mahomes at 4-1. I think that's really good value for a guy like Mahomes. Can we see a defensive / special teams touchdown in this game? I mean, you mentioned that, maybe Brock Purdy throws an interception here, or maybe he fumbles the football. There's a scoop and score or a pick six. I think that's in the world of possibility here. It's at 6-1. I don't hate that either as well. But other than that, I really do think the stars are going to shine in this game here. McCaffrey, we saw this number like all the way up to like minus 400 during the regular season here. So it seems like we're kind of giving a discount here on the minus 215 for CMC. But I do expect him to find the end zone. I think that if he does, and if the Niners do end up winning this game, I do expect him to be at least in the conversation for MVP. Speaking of MVP, Chris, let's throw out our MVP picks here, who we think, maybe for each side, who we think will win the MVP for their respective teams.
Gotta go right back to the guy. I mean, it's one or the other, right? So we're going Mahomes. I think I saw him at plus 130. He'll have the ball in his hands the most, unless Isaiah Pacheco does something absolutely incredible that we've not seen really, not really done to the magnitude of winning. I think being able to be considered an MVP candidate, MVP winner. So he would have to go out here, and rush for 200 yards and have 2 or 3 touchdowns and, catch a couple passes as well, because mainstream media wants Patrick Mahomes to win the MVP as well. We got to mention that, right? So I don't expect, keeping it, super simple. Of course, you as you probably can tell, I like Kansas City in the game based on all the numbers and the notes that I'm giving you. But yeah, I'll take the guy that's been here before, the guy that's been, underdog. And shine the brightest as an underdog. We know what is he? 10-1 as an underdog. I think is what he is. Yeah. Give me that like guy. That, give me that guy. And then no, go ahead. I'll stop there. I was just gonna mention.
You're right. If you like the Chiefs in this game, obviously it's either going to be Mahomes. It's at plus 125, plus 130. But then after that, like there's a significant drop off. The next guy is Travis Kelce at 12-1. So I mean, I think what we're both expecting as far as MVP honors, if the Chiefs do end up winning the game, it's going to be Mahomes. But if you want to put a little bit on Travis Kelce at 12-1, I don't hate it. I think he would have at least have to have 3 touchdowns in this game and maybe 150 plus receiving yards, which at that point you may just be better off finding like a same game parlay for Travis Kelce. But at 12-1, I don't hate it. For the Niners side, I think the guy has to be Christian McCaffrey. If I see plus 500 out there. I think that might be if you like the 49ers to win this game, you probably want to get down on McCaffrey to win the MVP at around plus 475, plus 500. But other than that, if you want a longer shot, I mean, I talked a lot about George Kittle in this game, 60-1. I think that's a possibility here. He would have to have another monstrous game. And I think that if he gets 2 touchdowns and over 100 receiving yards in this game, and the Niners do end up in fact winning this game, I think George Kittle would definitely be in that conversation for MVP. And then Brock Purdy, again, if he has 2 interceptions with 2 touchdowns, I think those interceptions will probably put him out of the running for MVP. But I really do think it's either going to be top heavy. It's the stars that are going to be shining, like you mentioned. Mahomes for the Chiefs. I'll put something down on Kelce, and then for the Niners side, I would throw out Christian McCaffrey plus 475 and put a little bit on my guy George Kittle here as well. Here, Chris, you want to mention something?
Nah, I mean that's perfect. It's almost like you jumped into my brain. That's everything that I thought as well. Like you said, long shots there. Those are the only ways I could look.
Yeah.
One question, going back to the player prize, to touchdown scores. Would you bet CMC two rushing touchdowns, or would you just stay off them altogether?
I really do think like this if the Niners are going to have success in this game, it's going to have to be CMC. It's going to have to be CMC. It's going to have to be George Kittle. And again, we talked about what the game plan is going to be for Kyle Shanahan. That again, if CMC is one of the players, and we talked about this during the regular season as well, Chris, he's a guy that can have a receiving touchdown and he can run it in as well. Those are the great things that you could have about running backs, especially a guy like Christian McCaffrey, where he can have a receiving touchdown, he could have a rushing touchdown. That gets you 2 or more touchdowns at plus 245. It's a Super Bowl. I understand it's at minus 215, but I do expect him to find the end zone here. If you want to same game parlay that with a McCaffrey touchdown and with something else, I don't hate it, but I do expect big things from McCaffrey in this game here, Chris.
Yeah, I'm same thoughts. Just wanted to make sure we were aligned. I absolutely agree.
All right, Chris, let's give out our official predictions for the Super Bowl 58 game between the Niners and the Chiefs. Give me your winner and give me a final score for this game.
So winner, gotta go with the underdog here. Yeah, too. It's so easy to take the underdog, but I gotta take the underdog, man. You just back Patrick Mahomes every single game. That he, quote unquote, by the sportsbook's price isn't supposed to win. I mean, that's what he does. Is what he does. So plus 110, I think, on BetMGM and FanDuel right now. And Caesars right now is the best odds that we can get. But yeah, give me Kansas City on the money line here. I do think that they find a way to get the job done. I know San Francisco has the revenge, and I know that they're a really, really good team. But these are the last 2 teams. So, they can be a great team and not necessarily win the Super Bowl. Typically, that's how it goes. So I expect Kansas City to be locked in here. I love that, that they're the dog, and you can actually get them at plus money. And then final score, we're looking at a total of, what's the total?
47 and a half is the number.
47 and a half. Okay, 47 and a half. Give me Kansas City 20. Give me Kansas City 27, 23. 27, right. 23. I'll go Kansas City 27, 23. What you got?
I've been on this Niners team at the beginning of the season. I do have some futures on them as well. Picked up even more futures on them when they were on that 3-game losing streak, and they went into Jacksonville and absolutely blasted that team. And It makes me nervous, like you mentioned, to go against the guy that's in the conversation now for GOAT. He's already some people's GOAT already in Mahomes. I just always kind of go back, and I'm a narrative guy. I think that you mentioned the revenge angle for this Niners team, that this team was there in the Super Bowl 54. They were up 20-10 going into the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And they just let it slip away. And I think that, like I mentioned at the top of the show when we were talking about it, that I think all the pressure in the world is on the San Francisco 49ers to win this game. I think they rise to the occasion here. I think they get it done. Will that be shocking if Mahomes wins? Of course not. But I'm gonna ride with the team. I can't turn on turn on them right now. I'm gonna go 24-21 Niners get this done. And I think it's a big CMC game here, Chris. So we're on opposite sides. We already know where Rod's allegiance lies in this game. So but hopefully, Chris, it should be a good game. The line is indicating that it's going to be a game that probably comes down to the wire here. But yeah, man, official predictions there. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this last player props episode, at least for the NFL season?
Nah, man, I think it's gonna be a great one, and I'm actually happy that we're on opposite sides of him, because we can't agree all the time, right? And with a spread so small, like, it makes sense, right? So just leave people with, bet responsibly, man. Nothing else. I think it's gonna be a great game, like you said, as the spread kind of indicates, and I think this is what the people wanted, right? Detroit didn't make it, and they had a great run, great season. Same thing with Baltimore. Baltimore could have potentially been here, but they didn't, and now we get the clash, right? We get the rematch. So it was like Craig said, it's the rematch. So from Friday, we'll see how it goes.
Yes, sir. Hopefully it is a great game here, and then hopefully we again found some winners. So we put out 2 propcasts for the Super Bowl. Chris and I, we did the game props on the previous episode, and this one obviously geared to our player specific player props, as we've done all season long. Also our MVP picks in there, like we did, and then our touchdown scores there as well. And then that is pretty much it, man. I can't believe we're here at the finish line, the last game of the NFL season. We'll come back sometime in the next couple weeks and kind of go back and look at our season-long player props. I know we haven't done that yet. I did do the recount on mine. I had a pretty good season, but we'll go back and we'll recap that and maybe look forward to next season as well. But as for right now, one NFL game left. Enjoy it. Like Chris mentions, bet responsibly. Have fun. If you're going to be out at a party, drinking, call an Uber, don't drive, be responsible, but just have a good time. We won't have football for at least a good 5-6 months before we get back into either you're a college football fan or a NFL fan with preseason of the Hall of Fame game. But enjoy it. Hopefully, whichever team you're rooting for wins, and hopefully we were able to find a little bit more money to put in your pockets here. Make sure you follow Chris on X at ChrisBeCappinn. That's 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. More importantly, make sure you guys subscribe to the NFL Gambling Podcast YouTube channel as well. And if you haven't already left us a rating and review for the Propcast or for the NFL Gambling Podcast, please go ahead and do so. All right, enjoy the game. We'll talk to you guys within a couple weeks, or at least for the NFL, and me and Chris will be ramping it back up for the NBA when all eyes will be on the NBA after the Super Bowl is over. Till then, good luck with your bet. Let's break these books off and let it ride.